The first time Daniel heard the dog cry, he thought it was a child. It was the kind of sound that cut through everything: the rain, the sirens, the shouting of first responders, thin and desperate, like grief with a voice. Daniel froze in the middle of what used to be a street in eastern Kentucky, mud clinging to his boots, floodwater rushing past his knees. "Did you hear that?" he asked no one in particular. Another cry came, weaker this time, from somewhere beneath the collapsed remains of a house. Daniel didn't hesitate. He never did. 3 years earlier, he would have walked past. 3 years earlier, he had still believed that saving yourself was hard enough. But after the accident, after the empty house and the unopened mail and the quiet that felt like punishment, something in him had changed. Pain had softened him in strange ways. It made him listen. He dropped to his knees and began pulling away splintered wood with bare hands. "Hey," he whispered, not knowing who or what was listening. "I'm here." The floods had come fast. Days of relentless rain swelled the river beyond memory, beyond maps. Entire neighborhoods were swallowed in hours. People lost homes, photos, heirlooms, lives. The news would later call it a historic disaster, but Daniel would remember it by the faces, mud-streaked, hollow-eyed, clinging to whatever was left. Daniel was a volunteer with a regional rescue group, though the word volunteer never felt right. He showed up because he couldn't stay away, because being useful was the only thing that quieted the ache in his chest. He dug until his fingers bled. Under a fallen beam, wedged between concrete and drywall, he found the dog. It was a medium-sized mutt, maybe a shepherd mix, with matted brown fur and eyes too big for its face. One leg was trapped, twisted at an angle that made Daniel swallow hard. The dog didn't snarl or snap, it just stared at him, trembling, letting out soft, exhausted whimpers. "You're okay," he said, voice cracking. "You're okay. I've got you." The dog didn't believe him. Not yet. It took 40 minutes to free the dog. 40 minutes of careful cutting, lifting, and whispered reassurances. When the beam finally shifted and the pressure released, the dog collapsed into Daniel's arms like it had been waiting for permission to let go. Daniel carried him through the water, cradling him against his chest. The dog smelled like wet earth and fear. His heartbeat fluttered, fast and fragile. At the temporary shelter set up in a high school gym, a volunteer wrapped the dog in a blanket. "No collar?" she asked gently. Daniel shook his head. "No tags. House was empty." She nodded. They both knew what that meant. Disasters had a way of separating things that loved each other. Daniel stayed with the dog through the night. He sat on the gym floor, back against the wall, while cots filled with exhausted survivors lined the room. The dog slept fitfully beside him, waking often with a jolt, whining until Daniel rested a hand on his head. "It's okay," Daniel murmured over and over, like a prayer. "I'm not going anywhere." In the quiet hours before dawn, when even the generators seemed to hum more softly, Daniel talked. He told the dog about his wife, Emily, how she used to bring home stray animals despite his protests, how she said, "They find us for a reason," how she was gone now, one bad intersection, one red light that never mattered until it did. "I didn't save her," he whispered, tears slipping down his nose. "I wasn't there." The dog shifted closer, pressing his head into Daniel's chest. A slow, steady breath warmed the fabric of his jacket. For the first time in years, Daniel cried without trying to stop. The vet confirmed the dog's leg was broken, but salvageable. Surgery would help if someone was willing to pay. Daniel didn't ask how much. He just nodded. "I'll figure it out." They called the dog River after where he was found. River didn't walk much after the surgery. He learned to balance on 3 legs, hopping awkwardly, stubborn as hell. He hated the cone. He hated the crate. He hated being alone most of all. Daniel slept on the floor beside him. Weeks passed. The floodwaters receded. Volunteers went home. Media attention faded, but River stayed. No one came looking for him. Sometimes Daniel wondered if River had belonged to someone who loved him deeply, someone who screamed his name as the water rose, who never made it out. The thought sat heavy in his chest. But River didn't seem to be waiting. He chose Daniel quickly and without question. River healed slowly. His leg would never be perfect.
"It's okay, boy, I'm
neither
here."
was Daniel's heart, and
You're
they learned
such a
to
good
live
dog.
with the limp together. Mornings became routine. Short walks, careful steps,
River stopping to sniff everything as if the world might disappear if he didn't memorize it. Daniel talked less about the past. River listened anyway. At night, River dreamed. He would whimper, paws twitching, breath hitching in his chest. Daniel would wake and place a hand over River's ribs, feeling the rise and fall. "You're safe," Daniel would say. Sometimes he believed it. One afternoon, months later, a woman approached Daniel at a community event. She stared at River, hand pressed to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. "That's him." Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs. The woman's name was Carol. Her brother had owned River. Her brother had died in the flood, trapped in his home while trying to free the dog. "He loved that dog," she said through tears. "Wouldn't leave without him." Daniel knelt, letting River sniff her hand. River wagged his tail, but he didn't go to her. He leaned into Daniel instead. Carol smiled sadly. I think he already found where he belongs." Daniel nodded, throat too tight to speak. That night, Daniel stood in his kitchen, adoption papers spread out on the counter. River lay at his feet, chin resting on Daniel's boot. "You don't have to stay," Daniel said softly. "I won't trap you." River looked up, tail thumping once. Daniel laughed, a broken, surprised sound, and signed his name. On the anniversary of the flood, Daniel took River back to the riverbank. The water flowed calmly now, betraying nothing of what it had taken. Daniel sat on the grass, River beside him, leash loose. The air smelled like wet leaves and distant rain. "I think we saved each other," Daniel said. River leaned against him, solid and warm and real. For the first time since Emily died, Daniel didn't feel like he was surviving out of obligation. He felt like he was living. Not because the pain was gone, but because love had found him again. In muddy water, in broken beams, in the quiet between sirens. And this time, he didn't let go.